Right. Hey everybody, welcome post Thanksgiving. We have a small crew today, small but mighty, as they say. I hope everyone had a nice break. For those in the U.S. and those out in the rest of the world, hi, welcome to November 30th. So, typical Tinderbox meetup. We go around the room, we introduce new people. We have no new people today. If we have a theme, we jump into a theme. We don't have a theme formally today, and then we talk about any kind of projects or things that people are working on. So let me start with you guys, or I'll just kind of throw it out there. So what I'd like to talk about today
Who cares
is,
what you want to talk about?
well, okay, well then let's talk about what you want to talk about. What do you want to talk about today?
No, I want to get Melvin talking. What did Melvin do? And you're in Central Europe, right, Melvin? Germany, something like that?
You're
No,
Melvin, you're
you're
on
on
mute.
mute.
Melvin, you're on
You're on
mute.
mute. You're on mute. Melvin, mute.
I think I'm just down the block from you.
You're
So not,
3Com?
not Germany. You're actually there
I'm
is
in,
your
I'm in
near.
Beverly, Massachusetts. So,
Really?
yeah, I could
Oh,
probably
cool.
join you over at De Niro.
I Beverly, God. Oh, right.
So
North
Yeah,
Shore,
like you say,
North,
right around
North
the corner.
Shore, North Shore. Yeah.
Oh, I remember a horrible trip from Duxbury to Beverly at rush hour in the rain. Oh God, it was awful. Driving through the heart of Boston in rush hour in the dark of night. Oh, it was awful.
Yeah.
To the Beverly Y to play squash. I went down three quick games. But anyway,
Yeah.
Michael, go ahead. Your
right.
wine is
No, so let's take a
we,
cue from David's comment and let's go around the room, starting with Melvin. Like Melvin, what brings you here today?
Actually, you're on my standard calendar. I'm still a learner. So,
We all are learners. So you're
right, I just hang around learning more each week.
okay, perfect. But you have no agenda item today.
No, no, sure don't.
All right. Kim, what brings you here today?
I've been out of the commission for like the last 7 months. A new BP came in, so we've been working 60 hours a week. So I've been out of any type of tinderbox mindset. So I do have a project that I'm getting ready to wrap up that can maybe use tinderbox, but I'm not. I've been out of it. I've been like just completely working incredible hours. So this week's been just relaxing, and but I just follow you guys. I have nothing to talk about.
So you're just here for the community, which is not
Absolutely, and
which is not
support
just, it's
and support
incredibly
too.
important.
it's a therapy session, Michael. We all know that.
I need help. Yes, a lot of help.
Okay.
Fast help.
I live and breathe this community. It's incredible. And David, do you have any particular agenda item you want to cover, or other than
Well, let me try. So, well, that's cool that Mel, for whatever reason, Dubnik sort of speaks of Central Europe, but I mean the fact that there's a typical an audience that's almost around the world, uh, and they keep and people. So it can, it's so much fun
yeah? All
that
right,
all
Peter.
have we all have these little special projects at. But anyway,
Yeah. All right, so Peter, Roger, and Erwan, we're doing a quick check-in to see what brings you each here today, and then I do have something I want to propose that we use for to discuss through our time today. But let's start with you all. Peter, what brings you here today? Anything in particular?
Okay, I want to let you know I'm still working on my effort to turn Tinderbox into an integrated development environment for building parsing expression grammars, and I'm sort of building into the templates. Well, first of all, I have my template is just simply calling into action code now. It seemed easier to do it all on the action code side, and I'm trying to build all of the intelligence in how to construct the rules based upon the documentation of the Peggy parser generator into the functions so that I can minimize the amount of thinking someone using the system has to do about the ultimate target parser. And possibly down the road, it could be generalized to target other languages and other peg parsers. So you can just be thinking really at high level peg rules, and it'll all just be selecting prototypes and filling in different fields in the note editor view. So you'll be just setting attribute values, and then the system will figure out how to construct the rule for you. Of course, that's taking more time than what I was originally doing. So we'll see how long it takes. But eventually, I can't guarantee when, I'll be able to demo the whole system to you, show you the code, and send out a copy for you to distribute to anybody who's interested. Then also, I have another question. I've been rereading Ted Nelson's Xanadu work, and I have a question. Does anyone historically know how he planned to assign numbers for nodes?
I know. So why do you even explain what that means?
Um, okay. He came up with a system for addressing arbitrary hypertext called tumblers. And the idea of a tumbler was it consisted of four parts: a node, a user, a document, and an element within the document. And those sections were divided by just a single zero. Each,
So Peter, you slow
yeah,
down a bit. Just assume nobody knows anything you're talking about. So like kind of slow the speed down and parse out the pieces. So what's the overall objective? What's a tumbler? What are the
okay,
pieces?
okay.
Let's start from the beginning.
All right. The overall objective was to have a string that would allow you to address any bit of content that you wanted to for purposes of eventually transclusion and selection, publication, all. So the very first component of a tumbler is the number one and a period. The number one stands for the entire docuverse of every single document that's ever been addressed. Um, there are two kinds of tumblers. There are address tumblers, which give you points in documents, and there are difference tumblers, which describe a span from a point in the document. So difference tumblers start with either one if you want to describe the entire document, docuverse, and nothing else. So that'd be a bold, naked one with no period after it. That's everything. And anything starting with a zero is a difference tumbler. And you basically match zeros to numbers in the addresses to indicate everything you don't care about. And then you can describe, maybe a three down at the chapter level would say go forward by 3 chapters. So that was sort of
Okay.
his kind of thinking. Um, then for the address tumblers proper, they start off with a one to represent the docuverse. Then there are four fields. The first field is a node representing a server somewhere. The second field is a user, and the user represents someone who has an account on that server.
I'm sorry, which is the first field? I missed that.
Okay, the first field is a node,
Okay.
and that represents an internet server somewhere.
Okay.
The second field is a user, and that represents someone who has an account on that server.
Okay.
The third field is a document field, and that represents some actual document that you care about referencing. And the fourth field is an element, and the element is something within that document that you're trying to address.
Okay.
Now, each one of the fields could be arbitrarily subdivided. And the way you could tell the fields apart is that there'd be a zero between them. So 0.0 point was the divider. There can only be three of them within an address tumbler, and that tells you how to separate the node from the user, from the document, from the element. Then within the core of each field, you can't have any zeros appearing because a zero alone in an address tumbler tells you, well, you could have a zero, but you can't have only a zero. Okay, so an address tumbler can only have a zero by itself to divide the fields. Within the fields, you can have zeros, but you can't have only a zero. So you could have 10. So you could have 10 representing node 10, but you couldn't have 0 representing a node 0 because there's no such thing. That could appear again in a difference tumbler, but not in an address tumbler. Now, his idea was that you could have infinite subdivision at any of those levels. So just put on a point, and then you add another number. So if node 1 had 2 classes of users, you could put in in the user field, a 1 as its first element, or 1 as its first component, or a 2 to represent those two kinds, put a period, and then have another number tacked on after that. So the idea is that you'd get maybe 1 number, 2 numbers, 3 numbers, 17 numbers, all delimited by dots in between them within a field. And you could do the same thing at the user level, so that you could divide it at the user level by what kind of a project you're working on, what the subject matter is, however you want to arbitrarily decide to assign the different subcomponents you could. So again, you could divide that. Now at the document level, the divisions could be versions of the document. That was the way it's sort of presented. So you might have, document 5.2, and that could represent version 2 of document 5.
Okay.
Then at the element field, that would be the equivalent of book,
Got it. Okay, so we're starting to get into
chapter.
All right, that makes sense. So now, like, what's the question that you have that we understand the context now?
Okay. Oh, let me just finish on the elements. Here's the neat wrinkle. The first digit of the element pointer would tell you whether it was bytes into the document or whether it was a link. So a 0.1 would be a byte stream, a 0.2 would be a link. So basically, in that last digit there, he was encoding, in that 1 digit, he was encoding what the data type of the data was that was being referenced. Okay, now back to the overall context. He never really said how he came up with the node numbers, and I was wondering if anyone knew, because if you just pick a number out of a hat, there's a good chance that maybe 2 people are going to say, I want to be node 100. And I was wondering if anyone knew how, whether he's going to have a central authority, or whether he had some scheme in mind to assign the nodes, since the node is the root of this whole thing. So you wouldn't want to have 2 people pick the same number to represent their server, and I was just wondering whether anybody had come across anything saying how he planned to do that. The way I could imagine doing it would be using some random ID generator like Nano ID, and give you, 36 random numbers between 1 and 9 to represent the node, and then smash them all together, knowing that there's a probability that in a billion years you wouldn't have somebody else get that same random number assigned for their node. But I was wondering if that was what Ted had in mind, or whether he actually imagined some central authority determining what the original node assignments were going to be.
All right, I don't think any of us on this call would necessarily know that. I'm not some, at least I'm speaking for myself. I'm guessing from others.
Yeah, if Mark Anderson was here, he might know.
Okay.
Mark Bernstein might know too, but
have you thought about asking like chat?
May I get a hold of Ted's email address and just send him an email? That might be the cleanest way.
You could. Ted's still alive?
He's still alive, but I don't know how communicative he is these days. I think he's just a little bit irritated that the world moved in a different direction than his technology.
But did it move in a different? I mean, I'm as you were speaking, I was kind of skimming Wikipedia, and from a grounding perspective, it seems like that's exactly where the world is going. In my opinion, in the world of like self-sovereign identity, every document's created by its user. That document has an identity associated with it. It's sitting on some decentralized server somewhere. There are the ability to attach royalty mechanisms. I mean, it sounds like that's exactly where the world's going right now, but just everyone forgot that Ted came up with it 30, 40 years ago.
Exactly.
All right.
Being a little bit too early on the adoption curve there.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, thank you for that. I don't think we have the answer, but why don't you ask, how would you, let me ask it a different way. Can you type in the chat the prompt that you would use to ask ChatGPT the question you're answering? Like, basically write down for us the prompt, and let's pop it into ChatGPT and see what it comes up with. In other words, write down your specific question. All right. We're going around the room a little bit. Bruce, what brings you here today? Mary Beth, what brings you here today? Roger, anyone you want to contribute?
I'll say something. Hi there, guys, gals, who's ever in the room.
Any travels lately? The Mary Beth Travel Best.
That's my alter ego. Yes, Dr. Mary Travel Best.
Be sure to drop the link for your book and your podcast in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. So I was on television last night promoting a local charity run called the Red Nose Run, dressed up like a reindeer. It was 6:30 news. It was a slow night, I think. But we're doing a run in San Diego. It's our 33rd annual, and I'm a volunteer. So that's why I was dressed up like a reindeer.
Volunteer, I like that. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody's in the San Diego area, December 13th. But in the meantime, yeah, Michael and I, we've just finished up our 14th annual Mobile Marketing Essentials update. And the book will be available to students. I think it's February 3rd. So I'm teaching 3 classes this spring using that textbook. And so any links that you provide to to your team, to anybody in this room, I bet we could get a link for you if you wanted to look it over. But if Michael wants to do that, just a way to combine how maybe using this platform has kind of helped him to make updates because of great indexing skills that he has. So anyway, I just want to catch up on what's new with you guys.
All right.
And I'll put my link in a little bit for my podcast also.
Yep, perfect. And your books too.
Yeah.
Oh, and if it's time for anyone to upgrade your Tinderbox licenses, they are on sale for Black Friday. I just did mine.
Oh, did he have a Black Friday sale?
Yeah.
Can you drop the link? I didn't see that.
Let me find it.
And then the Winterfest 2026 is coming up in a couple weeks. All right, Bruce, what brings you here today? Anything on your mind? Projects you're working on? How's your book?
Find the right button. Find the on button, Bruce. Find the on button. There you go.
I put it on mute for 30 seconds because I was having a conversation with my daughter. Am I now part of this?
You are part of it. We're asking you, how are you doing? What brings you here this afternoon this morning after Thanksgiving? And what's going on?
Well, okay. So not Tinderbox, but its evil cousin Gemini helped me last week find a police detective I've been searching for 20 years. And this is someone who had saved my brother's life and was part of the story, and someone who, in my brother's paranoia, told me this police officer was trying to kill him. So, of course, I was in London. I had to meet with the police officer. And Gemini suggested that I contact NARPO. You've all heard of NARPO, the National Association of Retired Police Officers. 24 hours later, I had an invitation to write an article for their magazine, unsolicited. And 48 hours later, I heard from the police officer, who I've since met with and am putting the interview into Tinderbox, of course, to help parse it out. Had a 1-hour interview with him and learned the many times he and my brother interacted. So that was a significant piece. And Tinderbox remains kind of at the core for keeping track of things. And I'm using Tinderbox and Notebook LLM together now to kind of keep track of things and trying to decide if there's a role for Devin Think in all of this. So that's that's where things are. But that was I have written so many agencies in London trying to find this person who had moved on to Hong Kong, and he and I met literally 40 years ago. So to have contact with this person who had so much useful information, and it also kind of helps me with the end of the book, which is a call for action, and just kind of looking through what's my experience as a psychologist, what's my experience as having been a family member going through this, how can people help what I would call rare and precious individuals, the Michael Jacksons, the Amy Wineharts, the people who both have so much to give, but are so vulnerable to being taken advantage by others and have difficulty managing their own lives. So that's where we are.
Yeah, if you think about the Amy Whitehart, I mean, she was actually signaling what was happening through her songs. I mean, it was very autobiographical and quite sad, actually, in the end.
All of them are, and I've come to learn that there absolutely are heroes and villains in these kinds of scenarios, and the villains are usually not. They're the people who are supposed to be the most trusted. In the case of my own biographical memoir, it's an attorney who robbed my brother, basically, and yet people who were also in a position to wield enormous power either never used it or used it in helpful ways, and that was and that was just something that, I mean, I've experienced now countless times. I mean, my problem isn't that I have a dearth of information. I have too much information. I mean, I put some 65 references into Google, and I will say I'm very impressed with what it did with it. It began to put things together, began to tease them out, but also it scares me a little bit because I need to use my own brain in all of this. And I think the difference between Gemini and Tinderbox is Tinderbox makes me use my own brain and then helps me along. And Gemini offers to do it for me.
Right, and that's where we start losing. That's the challenge with these AI tools is we start to lose our ability to critically think, and to cogently put concepts and ideas together.
So would you say that AI is to remaining intelligent as Ozempic is to weight loss?
That's a really good analogy. Perhaps,
Michael, don't answer that question. It's a trap.
I know, but it's like anything. It's like any tool we use. I mean, the challenge with what I'm hearing at some of the weight loss drugs is as soon as people get off of it, the weight comes right back. Right, and the question with the AI analogy is, as soon as we get off it, does our critical thinking come back? Probably not. Right, so it's going to be interesting to see how all of this evolves.
Well, it's so interesting that, with all this push against AI and what Sam Altman's company saying that the kid who killed himself violated their terms of agreement. I got to wonder what attorney came up with that line to push back. But I kind of think it's going to go in the opposite direction. And I think that AI is going to become acceptable as a companion for people who are more lonely and for people who are more socially awkward, kind of like having a bug in the ear, kind of like having that, that supportive friend that doesn't otherwise exist. And,
well, I don't
go ahead.
I personally don't disagree. I think it's absolutely amazing, and it gives you directional thinking that you wouldn't necessarily have put together. It helps you do that much faster.
Well, I don't even mean
the
it as
challenge,
a judgment.
though, is
I just think it's a reality. I don't know if I'm for
no,
it
it
or
is,
against it.
Yeah, no, it is a reality. But let's talk about what that means, though. I mean, the challenge is on the fringes of society, it is actually creating psychological breaks for some people. And think that they think they're God, or they think they're some next level mathematician that, and solve problems that the world, they're the first person to solve these kind of problems. In the
Well, now just to
it,
clarify, so you're talking about every time, I mean, according to Gemini, I'm an effing genius. I'll come up
yeah,
with things. Oh my God, that's brilliant. And if I take it to heart, my head's going to double in size. But
right,
I look at it that, Gemini is just a gifted fourth grader, being supportive.
right. But again, a lot of people don't understand that. As I understand and looking at the news, and it can get a lot of people confused. And if you're not careful, it's giving you're taking it as de facto definitive answers rather than directional things to think about. And then to think about going forward. At least that's my opinion on it.
I do worry between oh, I hate to use the word fake news, but I mean the ease with which AI can create news stories that are crafted to make a point of view and damn be the facts. You combine that with people's lessening apparent critical thinking, and you combine that with AI willing to step in. I That scares me.
Well, and to take it a step farther, my numbers are going to be not, directionally, they're directionally correct, but specifically off. There's somewhere between 10 to 25, 10 to 20% of internet rot, where the internet pages disappear, servers go down, content disappears. So, we're losing bits of the internet all the time. And more as AI and more content on the internet is being actually produced by AI and published by AI, and it's learning from itself. So you're starting to get this, no, it's basically, it's not creating new knowledge, it's not creating new items, and so you're just creating this what AI slop is the term that I've heard, and
Yes.
more and more of the internet is just going to become, again, your term, that you were saying, not fake news, but fake, right? It's not producing new insight. It's just regurgitating over and over and over again old thoughts and thoughts that may have actually never been true. And so
Well, it's also seems like it's changing it from a source of information to just one giant marketing vehicle.
perhaps, but it's not, but marketing, I'd be careful with that term because
When I say marketing,
it's
a
not just
right
about
wing or
business.
left wing individual who wants to create a website with a point of view can craft that and have it look absolutely bona fide.
Right. But the challenge though is I think more and more it's not even a human being doing it. AI is doing it itself. It's
At the
firing,
request of a human being.
maybe, but when you have agentic servers, it's making its own decisions.
Well, you got to call on Peter or David because I am certain they have nothing to say.
Yeah. All right. And then Peter and David, you've got a hand up on here. Go for it.
Okay, I'll go first. There's a man named Michael Stonebreaker here in Cambridge, MIT. Uh, we're probably all he's made multiple database engines. PostgreSQL is very popular, et cetera, et cetera. I happen to be sitting next to him at a conference and was poking the bear. It always makes me extremely nervous when academics mention the word metadata, because it means they have no idea what they're talking about. So I raised the issue of this speaker. Did she know the meaning of the word GIGO? GIGO. She was Greek, unfortunately, so I knew she didn't. And the common meaning for GIGO is the widely known meaning is garbage in, garbage out. I assume pretty much everybody here has heard that, but also by a show of hands, who here knows that the really dangerous meaning of GIGO is garbage in, gospel out?
Oh, interesting.
At which point, this Michael Stonebreaker, Turing Award winner, turned to me and said, I'd never heard that before. So that's my contribution for the day. Is that okay for Bruce? Does that make the point?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Peter, your hand's up.
Yeah, well, I've actually tried my hand at the agentic programming. I'll have a piece in the next Future of Text anthology coming out talking about that. Also, I have another piece in there on Tinderbox. And basically, what I found was that if you're already an expert programmer and you really hammer it with a lot of detail and use terms of art when you're forming your prompts, it'll get to the equivalent place of what you would have found if you were Googling for your problem and generally do pretty well. But if you start dealing with something obscure, it will go so far off the rails, but convincingly so that if someone didn't know, they'd have no idea that it was going off the rails. So I actually asked it the question about the tumblers from Ted Nelson, and it came up with a version of tumblers that did not have the field separators in them. It didn't know that it was supposed to start off with the number one, but it insisted that it was confident and knew what it was doing. However, when I walked it through all of the details on Nelson's specification, it went off and built a function to validate a tumbler and to classify what kind of a tumbler it is at my request, and it actually got that right. But you have to really get down into the weeds when you're prompting it. Otherwise, if you don't know enough to be able to evaluate whatever it does, to know if it's lying to you or not, you'll have no clue and you'll merrily go off and shoot yourself in the foot with a howitzer.
Yep. And some people have lost the law. I've read stories where people have lost their law licenses because of that.
Oh, yeah, I was on a law talk not long ago, and they said that they were getting about 10% of the briefs and things coming in from other law firms and lawyers in general across their desks that had clearly been written by AI because they were actually loaded with non-existent citations or misstatements of basic principles of law that anyone who was a real human lawyer could never get that wrong. It just, even if they were like drunk, running on 5 days no sleep, they wouldn't make the mistakes that were showing up in these computer-generated papers.
Right. And again, I think that's part of the challenge that we have with, all of these tools. And so, Bruce, I think you're right. These tools are here to stay. There's no question.
So
the question is, how do we properly use them?
well, yeah, what Peter just talked about.
It'll take us a while to realize that they're really just digital Snicker bars. Does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Roger, you were saying?
Yeah, what Peter was talking about, this is fundamentally a human failure, not so much of an AI. Yeah, AI got the wrong data, right? For whatever reason, but the human beings is where the main failure was here, not checking that stuff.
Yeah, but what's
Right.
the point of using it if you've got to go back and check every single thing? That winds up costing you more time because first you've wasted the time to develop the AI prompt to get to develop the document for you, and then going back in and manually going through everything at a low enough level to be able to catch when it's going off the rails is going to wind up probably taking you more time than doing it yourself. I found out on the AI coding, it's really weird. Like I said in the paper for the Future of Text, it works like magic until it doesn't. And in some things, it'll do it lightning fast, save time for me, and that's great. But then I get into another area where its model isn't aligned with reality as I know it needed to work with, and then fixing where it went off the rails winds up taking more time than the time savings.
So the problem with that then seems to be it's how do you validate the results you get back? If you can't just look at it and say, yep, that's right, that's wrong, and so on, it's too much stuff to look at. What can you do? One thing we're doing where I'm we're using AI for cybersecurity stuff. I can talk about that if anybody's interested, but we're pitting one against another, giving them the same problem, comparing the results, having them critique each other's, and it's kind of working out pretty good, or so it seems.
Yeah, this conversation just prompted a question that I got from my son last night, actually. And let me read it to you. It's in text. It says, at what amount of time, by the way, I want to circle back with you, Roger, possibly offline on the cybersecurity comment. That would be interesting. But this whole idea of, to the point that Peter raised, is like, when do we put in the time to learn it versus just having the tool do it for us? And this is a question my son had. At what amount of time does learning how to do something in a new and better way not worth the time and time spent? And so and specifically said, I spent 2 hours familiarizing myself with HTML and CSS and Tinderbox instead of formatting what I needed to be done in 10 minutes in Word. So how do we make, can you all think about that idea? Like, at what point do we just say, screw it, let's get it done in Word in 10 minutes versus spending the couple of hours to learn the tool? Or the ongoing aspect of it. And Bruce, in particular, I want to call you out on that because you've brought it up quite a bit, where I've been wanting to use Tinderbox, but I defaulted to a Excel spreadsheet or Google Docs because I just had to get it done. And I've talked about that too. Like, I just have to get stuff done, so I drop it in the Puppy Mill software tool. So what are your thoughts on that? This idea of learning a tool versus taking the off-the-shelf pre-configured thing.
If you teach a man to fish,
Right.
this is skill development. That's the investment. And
I mean, I recently took some additional courses, and I'm constantly looking at Tinderbox tutorials. When it comes to Tinderbox, I'm a slow learner. I'm a C- student. There we have it. And I seem to pick up other pieces of software more readily. What does that say? And also because I'm mostly using it, where I can use it personally and privately, great. So my own cases, working on my book, all of those things, Tinderbox is a viable tool. But for the rest of my practice, things have to be shared with my employees. And that is something that I've never come to feel fully confident because I can lock things down in other programs. And we do that. Our Google spreadsheet requires you to click, to be able to edit anything. So it acts as that barrier, and Tinderbox just doesn't have that functionality built in. And from what we've heard in the past, that would be a major undertaking to make that happen.
Okay. So in that context, there are capabilities in some of these other tools that are worthwhile. But I'm thinking I'm asking something more general than just that. Like,
Okay.
this idea of, I can just format something quickly in Word, or I can spend time learning HTML and CSS. Right? Why would I spend the time learning, the foundations of digital formatting in HTML and CSS when I can just have Word do it for me in 10 minutes? That's the question.
Right. Well, do you want takeout food or do you want to make it yourself?
Okay. Are there other benefits from that?
I think there's many benefits to learning it. It's something that I worry about as I am training new clinical staff, because it is an enormous time saver for me to let AI write a summary and then go back and tweak it. But I've done 3,000 of these summaries. And so I have a skill set, I can spot it. If someone is just using it and doesn't have the experience, what you're saying, the learning the CSS, understanding, I happen to think that the understanding part is critical. And not only the understanding, but having, I'm not a master programmer, but the fact that I can look at a piece of code and I have some understanding about it. And sometimes Gemini will do something and it doesn't work quite right. And I can look through it and I can say, oh, we'll try this instead. So I'm the helpful assistant to AI. I don't know, Michael. I mean, you're talking about, how much do we want to know about what's under the hood? I mean, that's ultimately what it is. And I mean, I think there's no question that as a society, we're just taking more and more at face value. And I see that as extraordinarily dangerous, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had a beautiful example of this just yesterday. I was using the new anti-gravity development environment out of Google for some code work, and I had the system trying to add some tests for me, and it did a great job. It's very good at coming up with tests for automated testing things, but it wasn't all that familiar with using Bun as a testing harness. So anyhow, I had the code going, and something was going wrong, and it wasn't finding a reference to another file that was in a different directory. So it wound up going and writing a bespoke build script, and I was already using a task runner that could handle dependencies between tasks. That's the core functionality of a task runner. So I was using the Moon task runner for this. And it went off and essentially wrote its own task runner in a standalone build script in order to make the test pass. And it was able to get the compilation right at the end of the day. The script was going in and it was changing the import statements in the different files in order to fudge everything to make it work, creating a bunch of 10 files in a directory, cleaning up the directory afterwards, and said, "Yes, I've just passed all 37 of your tests. I did a wonderful job." And I said, dear AI, this really isn't going to scale, and we are using the Moon task runner. Wouldn't it make more sense to use the dependency system in Moon to handle that for us instead of having the custom script? And it says, "Oh, what a great suggestion." Went off, collapsed all that, made it go away in 2 minutes, and had everything working, and all my 37 tests were passing again without it having this huge monstrosity that it spit out as an interim artifact. Um, Going back to the earlier topic of when you automate versus when you do it yourself, it's sort of a question of, at first, I avoid jumping into the automation until I find myself having to go back and reread the same documentation 6 or 7 times with varying gaps of time between them. It's sort of a question. If you're doing it continuously, it doesn't necessarily pay to automate it because you'll get it down right away. But if it's something where you wind up having to go back and reseat your brain in the same headspace that you were 4 months ago when you did it the last time in order to do it yourself, then it's a good candidate for automation. And that's kind of why my parsing expression project went from just using Tinderbox initially as an outliner. And what I did was I had simply a Tinderbox note for each rule in the grammar, and I'd write the note by hand. I write the grammar rule by hand, and I was just using Tinderbox to drag things around and reorganize them, which was working well. But then I realized that I kept having to go back to the same nitty-gritty low-level details of the parser specification language in the PEG documents one time too many. And at that point I said, okay, I can build this decision that I'm making based on having read that documentation into Tinderbox, so I can just work at the attribute level and say, I want to have 5 copies of this versus I want to have between 1 and 3 copies of it, or 0 or more. And I could set those as a value in a Tinderbox attribute, then have my Tinderbox action code go and turn that into which one of the 3 alternate grammar constructs for handling repetition in the parsing expression language is the correct one to use in this situation, and build out that code for me so that I wouldn't have to think about those details anymore. And then it starts saving you a lot of time.
Peter, sorry, I'm getting lost though. So can you, what's the point of the story? What's the, you went into detail and I found myself getting lost.
Okay, it's sort of a question of how many times you anticipate having to redo the task and whether the spacing between them is such that you're going to have to go back to the documentation. And if it's something where you're going to have to be being sent back to the documentation in future, then it makes more sense to encode it in Tinderbox now while it's in your head than try to save a little time by just doing the task and ignoring the automation and then being stuck in that same place again and again and again. So after 3 or 4 times of having done that, then I decided, okay, at this point, now it pays. Instead of just using Tinderbox as an outliner, I'm going to put the intelligence in Tinderbox to save myself future round trips through that documentation.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. But I want to go back to the comment let's go back to the fundamental question earlier. When do you spend the time to learn the capabilities, the fundamentals, HTML, CSS, versus just adopting a tool like Word. And I think Roger kind of nailed it earlier in one of the chats. What did you say, Roger? I missed it. It was a while back. There was a point you made and I missed it, or that's not coming to mind. Let's see if I can
I'm
scan.
old. I have a 30-second memory.
Yeah. Well, one thing you said, text rules. And I think the point you were saying there is kind of aligned with what David Eddy just said before. Because sooner that rather than later, the mighty software will change Word and destroy, or mighty Microsoft will change and destroy the work you've already done. I think one of the challenges is when you're working in any type of commercialized software, you're beholden to the design decisions of that particular developer. Two, if in the case of like Microsoft Word, your code, your text, your work is encoded in their own language. Because if you've ever opened up a Word document in a text editor, it's unintelligible.
You can unzip that. There's
Oh,
actually a zip file in there. You can unzip it and get to the XML form of the document.
You can try, but it gets really, really messy.
Oh, yeah, it does.
And so I think
well, I may have a solution for this that I discovered, and I apologized. I was responding to an email for a second. Are you talking about OCR in Google Drive or somewhere
no,
else?
no, we haven't been.
Never mind. Continue on.
He's talking about a Word document. You get a
Go back to
file
sleep, Bruce. Go
docx.
back to sleep.
Wait, I'm sorry, Roger. Talking about a Word doc that what?
Yeah, when you save your Word doc, it goes out to the file system and it has docx as the extension. You can unzip that thing, and inside that, you will find a folder structure, but eventually buried down in there somewhere is the XML markup for the Word document. And
Okay.
I've done things like that where I've written specifications in Word, and I've unzipped that file and gone in there and extracted stuff with awk to generate a program code from.
Right. But
Again, text rules.
The challenge being though is your ability to do that is contingent on your understanding the underlying fundamentals.
Oh, yes, it is.
Right. So if you're not learning, like in the context of my son's question, why would I spend the time to learn HTML and CSS? And you just introduced a new one, XML, or JSON or any other types of file structure. The problem is when the mighty software goes bad, when a file gets corrupted, you're screwed unless you have an underlying understanding of how something is structured, why it's structured that way, and how to your point, just staying simply just unzip it and search for your underlying content. I would argue 99% of the people out there would have no idea on how to do that. And so
I agree.
So their work is lost forever.
Yep.
This is not related to that, except peripherally. And so if I'm going in a direction, just cut me off. But Google Drive has two OCR engines. And I wasted about 6 hours of time a week and a half ago learning that. We've had a need to extract data from PDFs and to do so with excellent accuracy. And unfortunately, I'm dealing with hundreds of these forms. So it was, it was a massive problem. And it turns out that if you use, in this case, AppScript and the OCR it relies upon to extract a document, it will mess it up and you will get garbage because it's forcing it into the horrible OCR that is Google Docs. However, if any of you have clicked on a Google Drive file and you see that AI is doing a really nice job of summarizing, it turns out that you can create your own prompt to extract exactly the data that you need. And I'm using Text Expander now and extracting all the fields. Those fields don't have to go into Google. They could just as easily go into Tinderbox. And you can wind up taking all of your, field name / value combinations. And with so far, with what is 100% accuracy, it will parse exactly what you need. So because one of the things I've always struggled with is how do you get information from another source, such as a PDF, into Tinderbox. And while I haven't yet used this as a solution for Tinderbox, I'm using it currently within the Google Sheets environment. There's no reason you couldn't do it that way.
Correct.
So it's a different OCR engine. And if you, for example, in one case, we have a series of codes and it has to pick the right code. We tell it that the parameters are only these 6 choices. You can't use anything else. And that brought the error rate up from like 94% to 100%.
Or the error rate or the accuracy rate? It was 100% error or
Oh, I'm
100%?
sorry, the accuracy rate. The error rate is 0.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, we've not been trying to increase the error rate. We do
Yeah,
that
yeah.
enough
Let's
on our
increase
own.
the error rate to 100%. All right, got it. Okay. Now,
But it's just a
that
nice
does
way
raise
to
some other
extract the data.
things. Okay. So,
Go
but
ahead, I'm
here's
sorry.
another. But in response to that, that's again defaulting to this idea of needing to understand how the tools are working. Like you recognize through now learning that Google has 2 different OCR engines, and one doesn't work and the other one does work. And that, if you dig a little deeper, you can understand why. And if you don't understand how tools are built and how tools work and what is behind them, you may forever be lost. And the other thing, I think what I'm experiencing with my students now, is we're losing and again, I'm generalizing for sure, but I'd say the majority, I've put the majority of my students in this camp right now. We are losing the willingness or ability to work hard. And to spend, like I had one student said, it took me 3 hours to do that, and all it did was this. And I'm like, yeah, because you needed to learn the fundamentals first. And your initial output was going to be lame. And I told you it was going to be lame. But unless you understand those capabilities, and they're just looking for that instant gratification. The other thing is they said, well, if I do the 10 things you put in the rubric, why am I not getting an A plus? And I'm like, if you paint by numbers, that's a C plus. And A plus is excellence. And they've just lost this ability to do work and to struggle and to find it hard. They want paint by numbers by everything. And I told them, I'm like, look, your boss is not going to teach you how to do an email campaign. Your boss is going to tell you just to do it. And what I'm trying to do is to help you figure out how to learn how to do that. And they don't want to do it. It's too hard.
It's interesting, but I want to, boy, this is going to take us further away. I want to dig a little deeper than that because I think that's a little unfair to the 20-year-old-ish generation. I mean, look at the room right now. None of us are very close to 20. And imagine that 5 years ago, when
25.
you were 15, you had COVID and you've spent your, formative early dating years, living in COVID and wondering what's going to happen. And look at the political environment that they've grown up in. So one of the things that you're seeing, and it's hard for me, but those 3 hours that they're spending, they might be thinking, I also have to take care of my body and I need my workout time. If I can do this in an hour and a half and I can have an hour and a half to work out, that's really important to me. And so, to a certain extent, I think you're also seeing that it's not just as simple as that they don't want to do the hard work, but that there's some identity issues, maturity issues, work-life balance issues that this current generation has been struggling with that we don't have the same history.
I appreciate that. But at some level, though, like I had a friend of mine who was running a marketing agency, and he went to his 25 something employee and said, hey, I need you to buy a plane ticket because we're going to go meet the CMO of McDonald's tomorrow. And she said, I can't because Tuesdays are my me time and I'm not willing to do that. And he said, well, you either are going to be on the trip with me or you're going to be fired. And she quit. Right. And that's an exaggerated sense, but
So he couldn't have offered her Thursday as her me time?
Well, no, she could have taken her me time anytime she wanted. She said Tuesdays are my me time. They've developed there's such a rigidity that is starting to happen that I'm seeing. Um, and sometimes, and I was telling him like, look, you're going to get eaten alive in the workforce if you can't figure this stuff out.
Well, it's funny. My younger daughter is 27 and has lived through, her present for graduation was COVID. Got kicked out of her apartment, that, no graduation, etc., and has had the world's hardest time getting a job. She hates coffee, does not drink coffee, doesn't like the smell of coffee. So for her to have taken a job recently as a barista, uh, is a particular irony. She works at Warner Brothers now, hoping to get an in, uh, and was willing to take a job as a barista. So I look at that as grit. I see that as, someone willing to do something because she wants to work in PR. She'd love to work at Warner Brothers, and now she has a foot in the door.
I agree.
As a barista.
And I'm not saying there's not individuals out there. There are, I'm talking the macro problem, not the micro
I
problem.
know
There are
I come
micro
across it too.
individuals out there that are doing the job and fighting and working and struggling and moving forward. At a macro level, though, I just see it falling apart, and it's challenging.
I don't think you're wrong. I'm not pitting the other side. I'm just saying I think it has gotten complicated. Last weekend I was in New Orleans. That was New Orleans. I never say it right. New Orleans at a conference, and the two tracks that I went down were AI and technology and what's going on with that in mental health, and then parenting. And that's a whole nother level that you look at the kids who were growing up and you look at the parenting styles that are being used. They're very afraid to disappoint their kids or for them to experience strong emotions. And if the parents can fix it, they have a hard time not fixing it and just letting it happen. So all of that begins to form a big picture. You've got AI is willing to be the parent, if you will. That means that they don't have to sit there and struggle in your course for 3 hours because that could be distressing as they get it wrong and have to persevere. So I think that we've got a perfect storm occurring here.
Yeah, and it's unclear on how to navigate through it.
Well, make them all learn Tinderbox.
I'm trying. Don't get me, believe me, I'm trying. And on that note, maybe we can pivot the conversation a little bit. So the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about best practices in Tinderbox and trying to come up with a way with doing that. I'd like us to take a step back and independent of Tinderbox, but if and because I'm looking to revamp. This is a very self-serving question, so I'll just be clear about that. I'm looking to revamp my Tinderbox 101 on-demand class or course, or finally produce one where it's truly on demand and not just the weekly discussions. What both generically when it comes to note-taking, critical thinking, and writing, and then specifically with the host of tools that you bring to the table, like Bruce had already talked about. I'm using Tinderbox, I'm using Google, I'm trying to figure out, does Devin Think have a place and all of that. What do you think needs to be taught, and what people need to understand and know to be able to effectively succeed in this world of note-taking today? With Tinderbox being, and for me, with Tinderbox being at the heart of the training. So Mary Beth, if you were going to think about creating a course around the use of Tinderbox, like what is it that people need to know? What are the fundamentals? Mr. David.
Well, I'm using my convenient target of 18 to 22-year-old undergraduate business school students who do not see themselves as programmers using Excel. They get, if I ask them when they're working in Excel, do you consider yourself to be a programmer? They get this look of horror, and then they give the appropriate answer to an older person. And I'm trying to figure out how to slip into the dialogue how do you begin your personal note-taking habits, practices? Because it's not, it's a long journey. How do you get yourself into this is a personal discipline. You can't jump, only, look at the average age here. It's, anybody here, is there anybody here under 40? I doubt it. Maybe Michael, 50, over 50 mostly. And being a disciplined personal note taker is, where's the first rung? So that's a mental issue I'm trying to wrestle with. And also, especially with here, these kids are absolutely carrying the tools in their pocket on an iPhone. So there are various note-taking capabilities, Evernote, Apple's Notes, all kinds of stuff. Let's eliminate Evernote because you have to pay for it. Let's use tools that come with the device. And how do you start them down a path they don't understand they need to be on? So that's my open-ended quest.
Okay, so one learning thing they need to know is they need to understand how to develop the discipline of taking notes just in general, independent of the tool. Okay, what else? What else do you think people need to know in terms of learning objectives?
Well, pain's a great teacher. Doing things the wrong way is a great teaching environment. So that's back to your son of why put in the 3 hours when I can do it in half an hour in words. Oh, that's a chasm that's hard to cross. And let me know when you find the answer, please.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
I think it's when you start getting into tool building mode, then you need to dive deeper in order to understand something so that you can build a tool to automate it. So the process of trying to do the automation, it actually reminds me of the story. Did you ever read Danny Dunn and the Homework Machine?
No.
Absolutely great children's book, but it really sums up where we are with AI now.
Danny Dunn and the Homework Machine. Explain that.
The story is about a young boy whose next door neighbor is a professor, and the guy has built a new AI computer that can be programmed by talking to it. And Danny Dunn sort of like the kid science genius who goes over there and starts. Basically, he gets the computer that the neighbor has to automate doing his homework for him, and he thinks he's done such a great achievement. And the punchline at the end of the book is that the teacher concludes that he actually learned more programming the computer to cheat on his homework than he would have actually had to do if he was doing the homework manually. So he gets a good grade and doesn't get bounced out of school for having done it.
Interesting. All right. Is that a good moral?
I think that is.
Is that a good moral to the story in your mind?
Well, I think that there is a moral there that it's important that anyone learning Tinderbox understand is that Tinderbox really is not about getting the right answer. And the whole concept of itinerative development, if you will, which you've been, everyone who uses Tinderbox, we're constantly revising what we've started with. And so Tinderbox is something that requires resilience. When there is, the fact that there are multiple ways to do something, I think is important for people to recognize that there isn't a single path. There's multiple paths that you can choose. And then very simple exercises. I mean, one of the things that I think that's how I've learned to do what I've learned is that, I truly have needed Tinderbox in bite-sized pieces, and then to have a feeling of accomplishment for what it is I've changed. And I swear it could be as simple as changing the color of a background. The first time I saw that and I saw that I could begin to customize things, that was a real eye opener. So I think that my sense is lots of short courses, literally 5 minutes at a time for a concept, and then they can do something, especially if you're on the Teachable platform or something like that. That's certainly easy to do. And then I'm guessing that you would combine that, you're combining that with live office hours where you're available or something like that.
Probably. Yep.
Yeah, that's a nice model. Uh, you know,
So
but I think also to other people's point, helping someone understand why they want to use Tinderbox in the first place is is really key, because there's so many other tools that seem Tinderbox like, but they're ultimately not Tinderbox.
right. And right. So what are some of the 5-minute ideas that you think people need to learn?
I think setting up the structure for something. Let's say that I mean, partly, the hard part of what you would have to tackle is that everyone has a different purpose for Tinderbox. So, can you come up with some sufficiently universal use cases that bring in a broad enough audience, to capture their interest? It can't, maybe it's writing a chapter, or writing a paper, and for someone else it might be analyzing what coffee maker to get, but something that is very relevant and friendly to your younger audience.
Explain friendly to your younger audience, because honestly, when I heard that, I bristled a little bit.
You did
Because
what?
I bristled a little bit, and I'm just being honest, like, sensitive to my body. My body reacted like
Yeah.
there's, and
Well,
this is partly what I was trying to communicate earlier. At some level, how did you word it again? Be help the younger audience.
I said be kind. I said some. I think I said to be kinder to your younger audience.
Be kinder to the younger audience, and I think that there's part of me that just really wants to not like we take and be kinder a little bit too far, in my opinion.
Fine, if you want to have your nickname be Old Man Michael, the mean teacher, you can go that route. But you've got to speak to them for a course they're paying for. And I think you have to come up with examples that are meaningful. I mean, one of the other things that would probably be helpful would be, I mean, you're not just teaching for 60-year-olds. What is the minimum age to use Tinderbox? Is it 40? Kim, and I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I had a sort of a comment with Tinderbox. You're trying to, I mean, I've been looking at this thing called complexity, trying to deal with tools that help with complexity, break things down. The VOCA type of world is just crazy. And I think Tinderbox is that tool that kind of supports Asbury's law, requisite variety states that for a system to be effectively controlled, the controller must be at least as much complexity.
Kim, you're speaking a little fast for me, and you just threw out some terms like somebody's law. Can you slow it down a little bit?
It's in the actual text. I put it in the chat. It's called Asbury's law of requisite variety. And basically what it says, if you're dealing with in a complex world, you can't deal with simple tools to deal with all this complexity. And so what I'm saying, I think Tinderbox is the tool that deals with complexity. It can definitely break things down for a professor, providing the students with some tooling to deal with all this complexity, they need something. And I think Tinderbox is probably is a great tool that can definitely deal with all this complexity that's going on in the world. And I think that's what I use my tooling for, and definitely Tinderbox would be the tool that breaks down the complexity that's needed to support what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
I think so. What do other people say? And do you have a link to Asbury's law? I missed it in the chat if you've got it.
I just Googled it, that's all.
Okay. Looking for a definitive source. Nice.
I'll be right back.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Other thoughts, ideas? What else do people need to be learning? So, Bruce, going back to your point of 5-minute, Maribeth, please.
I think students need to learn, or at least I've been needing to learn how to make presentations. And so back to your son's question about, do we have to teach everything? I don't need to know how to design everything, but I need to know how to present information. And I think that is a key thing that students at this age, besides just text, I think they need to learn how to make presentations and how to make complex things simple. So I think that's one good thing that you could call into your learning outcomes. How do we make presentations, or how do we work as a team is another thing. So those are hopefully a couple of good ideas. And I know that teamwork isn't a big part of Tinderbox, but I think just making presentations, I think, is an important skill. I've actually been using something called edcafe.ai, and I think was originally built for the K through 12 audience, but I find that it helps me make presentations, and I'm making 20 or 30 sometimes in a day.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents here for this group, and I do have a paid subscription to that now.
Interesting.
Can you put that in chat? I've been using
Yeah.
beautiful.ai.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too.
I mean, at a certain level too, how do we keep track of all of our tools that we're using? Because at some level too, our data, our capabilities, our insights are getting spread really thin across all of these different tools.
That's a really good question. I think we all need to be able to organize our desktops and to share them across multiple devices. And yeah, it's a challenge. Where do we keep them?
Yeah.
One of my great windmills, perpetual tilting at windmills, is who here, by show of hands, has ever had any training whatsoever on how to organize their computer?
Yeah.
Don't anybody speak at once. I spent
Yeah.
about 30. I've given up chasing librarians. I mean, I'm talking in terms of the documents that this audience, the personal collection of documents that people at our age has collected and focused on for their life, and how to organize them. Obviously, one of my favorites is naming, because language mutates over time. We're taught from the earliest age to use new words. Don't use the same word 3 times in a paragraph. It's boring, but it's really useful.
Yeah.
And what I raised my hand for was the lesson of when I was a sophomore in high school, whatever math I had, algebra, trigonometry, whatever it is, I have no memory whatsoever, determined that was as much math as my father had 30 years prior in a PhD program. I took calculus as a senior, which was bleeding edge. The teacher would regale us with these tales. This is for you, Bruce, of the shooting stars for discovering and creating stuff were typically dead by the time they were 25. Alcohol, syphilis, sword fights, suicide, etc. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now I jump forward to my son took calculus as a sophomore in high school, and he took abstract algebra as a senior in high school. For the non-math majors here, there's probably more than one, math major here. Abstract algebra is the sophomore Fisher cut faith class. If you think you're going to be a math major, if you can make it through abstract algebra as a sophomore, you may have hope. Mostly they drop out, which is exactly what I did as a sophomore, going on to read Russian history. But anyway, how to jam the fact that pedagogy, Michael, has been able to package teaching and push it down and push it down and push it down to lower and lower levels. Self-organization, I haven't seen on the agenda yet. I've chased librarians and completely come up empty-handed. no interest in moving over to the world of collecting personal information. Absolutely no interest. And end of line.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Anybody else have any other thoughts? What are the key things that we think we need to be learning? Let's try to come up with a list of 5 to 10 core learning objectives as an output of today's session.
Oh, I just dropped a link for Ross Ashby's book, Introduction to Cybernetics, into the sidebar. Really great read. And also a link to the Wayback Machines archive of the Principia Cybernetica project, which has a whole slew of related readings in its library, so you can find those and enjoy exploring.
All right, so can you explain the idea of cybernetics to us?
Well, originally, before it got hijacked by science fiction writers, cybernetics was the study of control and communication in animals and machines.
Okay.
And then it turned into doing androids and crazy stuff like that when the science fiction writers picked up on the term without having actually read any of the original literature, and they turned it into Lieutenant Data in Star Trek, which it was not.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, the Wayback Machine is very cool. So, I mean, is there another learning objective there, by the way? Just understanding all of the, the key tools that are out there, like the Wayback Machine for, sourcing data. Is that a good learning objective at some point?
Yeah, that's definitely valuable. But I really think we have a problem with kids in school today because they don't want to be engaged in anything that challenges them. And maybe that's why they instinctually know that that's a good thing, or they wouldn't have so much enjoyment in Harry Potter and the challenges of the houses competing with one another for house cups and things. And we don't have that in our schools. And instead, everybody's just trying to take the easy way out. And maybe, at a subconscious level at least, they must feel some guilt because they realize that they're getting education light that isn't really teaching them anything. There's some percentage, maybe 14%, that really want to be challenged. And those are the minds that we want to try to reach out to.
Yeah. I just read a study the other day too. I'm see if I can pull it up, where Harvard just recently came out and said, like, the students are graduating and they're just not ready for the work.
And then my other question is, where are the corporations that are out there doing the hiring? They're, on one hand, they're complaining that they can't find any workers. They got to bring in visa holders to do every single job because no American is intelligent enough to be able to read a page without getting help from AI anymore. Then you have our whole generation of people on the verge of hitting 60, and why aren't they offering us big checks? Because, hey, you're a Tinderbox user, you're doing all sorts of interesting stuff we found online, and you have all of these capabilities that these kids graduating from college can't do. Let's hire you at 6 or 7 figures because you do have brains. We don't need to go to someone flying in from India and Bombay to do the work. We can find brilliant older Americans who have skills, memories. We can dip back into history and tell you about technology from the 1950s on up that these younglings coming out of school have no inkling even existed. Why aren't they looking for us in recruiting and offering us really fat checks? And then the younglings could see us getting the really fat checks from the mega corporations and say, gee, if I want to have a lucrative future, maybe I should actually work hard and study and learn neat stuff.
Yeah. I want to go back.
Done with my
I want to go
ageism
back to a
rant.
comment. I want to go back to a concept or a comment that Roger, I think, made earlier too. It's like, what's the balance that we need to have between understanding concepts and actually having skills to do something and use the tools? And what I'm experiencing in the current class I'm teaching, I'm forcing the students to develop an awareness of the existence of certain tools and the ability at least to log in and start using them, if not well, and versus just the generalized concepts. And what I'm finding is my class might be the first class that they've ever had to actually learn more than one tool. And and they're saying, why can't you just, and then one of the students actually gave me a comment, why can't you, why are you exposing us to 10 tools? Why can't you just expose us to one tool that does it all? And my response to her was, because there isn't one tool that does it all. You actually need 10. And you need to do the work to stitch them together to make something actually productively work. So I guess my question is, what's the balance between conceptual ideas and actual, journeyman tool knowledge? And are we going back to do we need how much work do we need to go back to retooling this educational process to actually teach, especially in the white collar world, teaching people the tools? Thoughts? Mary Beth, I noticed you nodding your head there. What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm moving to a different room. This is hitting me right now. Very important conversation. I agree with what you're saying. So I'm actually studying this myself. How do I get students to learn how to use that tool? So I think I have to do it first and show them how I do it before they're even willing to take a stab at it. So they need to have that confidence that their teacher can do it. Then they can do it in a group, and then they can do it by themselves. I think that's something I have to figure out.
Yeah, and there's a certain level. I was telling, like, there's a tool called Figma out there. It's being used by
Yeah.
designers more and more.
Yeah, I've been
And
using Figma.
there's a certain level of vulnerability that I think the teacher needs to bring to bear too. And I'm like, guys, like, look, I'm not a designer. I don't know how to do 90% of what this tool is capable of doing. My objective here is to introduce you so that you introduce it to you so you know it exists. Give you a couple of assignments to, like Bruce's point, some 5-minute exercises so that they can get in there and do something, that, like change a color, so that you break down the barriers, so that at some point I can say, okay, now you need to figure out the rest, because we could spend an entire 15-week course just on this one tool, when in fact all we have is 30 minutes to expose you to the fact that the tool exists. Right. And here's or an hour, and here's a quick assignment, and go do it. And then let's move to the next tool. So you can see the broader field of what it takes to be successful in certain job disciplines. Like in the case of Mary Beth and me in our textbook is mobile marketing, right? There is no one universal tool to do mobile marketing today. It takes at least 10 to 15 different tool concepts. And how do you actually help people achieve that, and not be so scared to, like, log in and use a tool. And that's what I found really fascinating, is by the 4th or 5th time students get into it, yet another tool, they start realizing, oh my God, this is a really rich field, and it's much more than I thought it was. And by the end of the class, a good third will be grateful for having gone through the effort. Third will be completely pissed. And you've got a group of people in the middle, and I'm trying to figure out how to again, go to not be what Bruce said, the curmudgeon-y old teacher that everybody hates, even though they learned a lot. Yeah. How do you find that balance of I don't know, stern kindness, I guess.
It's interesting. When I went to my conference last week, 2 longtime friends and colleagues have both had the experience of being fired from their teaching positions because of complaints from younger students. And these are individuals who I would say extremely knowledgeable, extremely competent, a little tough. And that little bit of toughness rubbed the, 1 or 2 students the wrong way, and they went full steam, and, the student won. Did they win in the long run? Probably not, but they managed to get contracts terminated.
Right. Yeah.
So that's partly what you're, you could also say you have to be 35 or older, or be willing to say that I'm not easily triggered to take my course.
Right. Or yeah. And that's the funny thing too, is no matter how many times you say it's in the syllabus, I've said it in these lessons, half the time they're not even listening. And that's part of the problem too, is, and this goes back to your marketing comment earlier. They say it takes like 16 touch points in marketing to get people to become aware of an idea, let alone actually taking action to buy your product or use it. I think the same concept exists for teaching ideas. It takes multiple touch points to get a point across. And how do you do that in just a 15-week class or course? Interesting. And again, we've been spending this Tinderbox thing now for what, 4 years? Or in Mark's concept, 20 years plus 4 years. And it's really hard. It's and yet gratifying once you, to Bruce's point, once you actually start breaking that barrier and you start finding that ability to have that magic sweet spot between knowing the tools there, knowing you don't know it all, knowing you don't need to do it all, but you can actually accomplish and get something done. Like Bruce, the other day when you called me up and said, can you help me prepare these materials? And within 20, 30 minutes, we saved you hours.
Yep.
But it was knowing and we're able to get work done that wouldn't have been able to have been done in any other way, really. And that's the question of how do you actually find that sweet spot? And I think it also goes back to your point, Bruce, of like that set of use cases.
That's your case study right there.
Yeah.
Write it up. That's going to be convincing to a new potential student.
Yeah.
Book 'em, Dano. Book 'em, Dano.
All right, guys, we have about 2 minutes left in today's session. Is there anything else you all want to talk about, or shall we wrap it up and we'll start December tomorrow, which is just blowing my mind. Like, where did 2025 go?
Well, 2026 is next week.
It's just unbelievable. It's like, yeah.
By the way, I threw into chat, I don't usually see Grammarly screw up majorly, but it certainly did earlier today when it corrected what I was saying and said, it wants me to say, was you correct in your response?
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, not even Grammarly.
Yeah. So
the one
trust
thing,
AI blindly and not good.
Michael, I'm looking at AI anxiety right now. That's something I'm looking into. Just kind of throwing that out there. I got a little grant to do some research on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. 10:30. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.